everyone, my name's Kaku and welcome to my channel Sudani Speaks. As you've seen from my intro and if you've been on my channel recently, I have changed my channel name from my first name Kaku to Sudani Speaks. I am Sudanese, so that's why I changed the first name to Sudani and the second name is Speaks because I speak about different types of content about the entertainment industry here on my channel. So I thought that this would be a great way to put my heritage and the things that I love to do both as my channel name, which was my reasoning for wanting to switch it. And yeah, so as usual, be sure to check out my social media, my personal Instagram, my photography Instagram, my website, and my Twitter will all be linked in the description box below. And I hope you all enjoy the video that I've prepared for you today. Before we get started on today's topic, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of the love and support that I got on my Glee video that I did on Mercedes Jones. I did not expect the reception that I've received from it. As you can see on screen, there is over 6,000 views on the video, which is crazy to me. I honestly was just excited making a video about a character that I loved, that I felt should have been done better, and the fact that you all agree with me and enjoyed the video and have been commenting with me about different things that you love about Glee has been really exciting. And I'm really appreciative of all the new subscribers that I've gotten and also the different views on my other videos that I've received. My colorism video is now over 1,000 views as well, so I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you because I'm so grateful about the reception. For today's video, we are going to be discussing the television show Degrassi the Next Generation and how I believe it failed its black characters. I'm going to be focusing on 4 characters that were popular from seasons 1 through 8 of Degrassi the Next Generation because I do feel that a lot of the issues with the black characters on the show can become redundant if I keep speaking on several characters that were a part of the show after season 8. So I feel like discussing these 4 characters will give you all a good gist of the certain issues that kind of are over-encompassing with the black characters that are on Degrassi. And those characters are going to be Jimmy Brooks, Hazel Aden, Liberty Vanzant, and Danny Vanzant. First up is Jimmy Brooks. Now, Jimmy is definitely one of the more well-liked Degrassi characters when I see, comments from people in the fandom and just the way that most people that I know that have watched the show react to Jimmy. There isn't really anything bad that you can say about his character, but there are a few things that I believe that they could have done better with Jimmy that could have brought him to an A++, if that makes sense. Now, one of the things that I would like to mention about Jimmy is that I feel like he was well-rounded in kind of a bad way. Now, let me explain. When the show starts off, you don't really know anything about his family. We know that he's well off in terms of finances, but his parents are not really around, so he's mostly hanging out with his girlfriend at the time, Ashley, and her family, or his friends, and that's usually the people that end up occupying his time. I would have liked to see a little bit more of a backstory with Jimmy and his family to kind of see why his parents behaved the way they did, why they weren't really around that much, and kind of understand more deeply, why he was the way he was in certain aspects when it came to his family life, because his family never really appeared in the show until he had his shooting. And even with his mom, the character that played his mom, pretty sure we only saw her in 1 or 2 episodes, so you don't really see much of his mom. Even the times that you see his dad, he's kind of portrayed as a shrewd businessman, kind of the typical antagonist business guy that you imagine when you think of those types of characters on screen. But even then, we still don't get that much of those two and their dynamic, even though from what we did get, we could kind of see why he didn't see much of his parents, during his time growing up. I feel like another, thing that I wish they would have done more with Jimmy is that I wish they would have had him show more emotion. I feel like, with somebody having gone through something as traumatic as him, getting shot and then becoming disabled, I feel like he should have had a lot more outbursts or fits of rage or I don't know. I just personally, I would have liked to see more dynamic in his emotion, because I don't feel like we really got that. I feel like it was pretty surface level, a lot of the reactions that we had with a lot of things, even with the way that he interacted with Spinner. I'm not saying that like I didn't like to see the progression and how they eventually became friends again with his involvement in him being shot, but I do think that they could have done more in, I guess, just the way that he would have been upset for something like that. Like, your best friend had a hand in you becoming disabled and not being able to walk again. I feel like there should have been a lot more reaction in that sense for the certain situations that he had dealt with. And I just personally would have liked to see a lot more dynamics with this character instead of him just being that number one go lucky guy that everyone loves. I feel like it would have been nice to see maybe kind of a Scrooge kind of attitude at one time from him. I think that would have been nice. I personally found it really disappointing that Jimmy's relationship with Hazel was his shortest of the show. We hardly got any scenes of them alone together. Majority of their scenes was them with their friends and just groups of people. Even their first kiss was like, with the people that they had detention with in that episode. And I just don't really understand why, when it comes to the black couples on Degrassi, they get hardly any screen time. And being specific to Degrassi The Next Generation, majority of the black couples on the show, they get hardly any screen time. So it's like, how can you even root for this couple when you're barely seeing them versus a couple like Emma and Sean, for example. Next up, we have Hazel Aden. Now, Hazel is definitely one of the black characters that was done the worst within the season 1 to 8 time frame of The Next Generation. One of the worst things was the fact that she was just not a standalone character. Almost every single storyline that Hazel had, it was in connection to somebody else. One of the only storylines that she had that wasn't in connection with one of the other principal characters in the show was the storyline where she was ashamed of her background. The character Hazel is of Somali descent, and because of her experience of being bullied at a past school, she doesn't want to submit to being Somali to her other classmates at Degrassi. And in this, she bullies another young girl who wears the hijab and is Muslim. And it's just really mean, and I just didn't care for the way they went about it. They also got the actress Andrea Lewis to say Somalian, which it's Somali people, not Somalian people, for anyone who was not aware. And I just thought this storyline would have been so much better executed with somebody who is actually of Somali descent. Not to say that to get rid of the character Hazel altogether, that's not what I'm saying. I think they should have just allowed her to be Caribbean like the actor Andrea Lewis is, and I feel like that would have been done a lot better, because I feel like there wasn't a lot of grace with the way that they handled this whole situation. And I am aware that this happened in the early 2000s, but I still feel like that storyline could have been dealt with in a much better way. Another issue that I have with Hazel is the fact that she pretty much was a glorified extra. I mean, of course, she got a lot of speaking time in the show, and like she was in many episodes through her time in Degrassi. However, she was always secondary to somebody else. She was always the footnote in somebody else's story, whether it would be helping Paige after, she was sexually assaulted, or looking out for Terry when she figured out that she was being abused by Rick. I feel like there was never really a moment in the show where Hazel got her opportunity to shine versus other characters throughout the show being comparable to Paige, because she was so close to that character throughout the whole show. I just feel like it's unfortunate that they never took the opportunity to really take advantage of the talented actress that they had in Andrea and really giving her character better storylines that she wanted. Now, the actress Andrea Lewis actually made a video about 4 months ago discussing when she came forward about negative experiences she had being a black actress on the Degrassi set. So I want to leave a clip of this video here for you all to watch, and I'm also going to link it down below, and I encourage you all to watch it because I think it's really great when we get to actually hear from the people who were on the set and their experiences that they had. So here it is.
Nonetheless, I made this post because a director had confirmed something that I had felt in my experience while I was there. And let me tell you something. The Degrassi community, the Degrassi fan community specifically, was not at all open to hearing my point of view as one of the actors on the show. That post, if there were 200 comments on it, 150 of them call me the N-word and threatened me and said that's not true and said I was worthless and said all of this negativity to me. And I just ignored it because I don't give a fuck. Truthfully, that's my personality. I could care less, honestly. I know my worth. I know what I'm after. I know where I'm going. I know what I'm doing in my life.
Lastly, I just wanted to speak about Jimmy and Hazel again. I did touch on them when I was speaking about Jimmy, but I just wanted to kind of speak about the relationship from Hazel's perspective. I feel like after Jimmy's accident, they kind of wrote her off to be like this unsupportive girlfriend who like wasn't sensitive to like the needs and wants that he had, but they also didn't write Jimmy to be confiding in her and to tell her that he just didn't only want to play basketball and was kind of acting shady with Ellie. He did develop feelings for her throughout this time frame, and I just feel like that was so frustrating to watch as a viewer because I could sense that this was like leading to them breaking up, that whole scenario. And I feel like they just did such a disservice to Hazel as a girl and as the girlfriend to Jimmy, because we hardly ever got to see them, and most of the time that we did see them, it was like all this conflict. She wasn't being that good of a girlfriend, and then he gets feelings for someone else, and I just didn't care for the way that that was written and the way that it was done at all. Next, we have Liberty Vanzant. Now, Liberty is one of the school's, smartest overachiever kids next to, a character like Emma, and she's kind of like that annoying character that a lot of the times is comedic relief throughout the show, and that's basically, when you sum up her character, that's basically what she is in the beginning. One of the things that they should have done with Liberty is I felt like they should have gave her more nuance. Like, they never really explained why she has the drive she does, where it comes from. It's just, oh, here's this kid who's really smart and is super annoying majority of the time. They never really gave us like any instance of like why Liberty behaves the way she does, and I wish that they would have, because throughout the entire show we never got really any of that. Even in terms of like her family, we see her family very few times in the show. Obviously, her brother Danny later comes in the show after a couple of seasons, but in terms of her parents, they're never really like in the show. You kind of have this assumption that they're involved with her life, but we never really get to see them or know anything about them and their relationship with Liberty, because maybe that could have had an impact on why she was so smart. So that also is something they could have done with her as well. Another thing about Liberty that I didn't care for is the whole storyline of her getting pregnant with JT's child. I feel like that was such a cop-out, because it's very rare to see a black character who is intelligent and really holds their studies in such a high regard that like Liberty did. And I would have preferred if she didn't get pregnant and they just kind of rode that storyline out and kind of elaborated on that, because there was so many teen pregnancies in the show. I don't really feel like Liberty having to be one of them was necessary. They could have easily gave that responsibility to another character, bearing a child and coming up with the idea of giving it up for adoption. I feel like that would have been so much better, instead of just, oh, here's a black character, she's smart, but it doesn't matter because she's gonna have a child. Even though she didn't end up keeping her baby, I still feel like that storyline was a cop-out in my opinion, and I would have preferred if they just didn't do that altogether. I personally think that it would have been interesting if they did it with a character like Emma, who comes from a teen parent and then had a child as a teen herself. I think that would have been really interesting to do, instead of giving that whole storyline to Liberty. Lastly, another thing that I wanted to discuss is I really did not like how Liberty became so mean to JT. I understand that a lot of her anger came from the fact that they weren't together anymore and he had moved on to Mia, but I don't know, a lot of the times when she was upset with him and the way that she treated him and spoke to him so horribly, it really just made me feel uncomfortable. And I really despise how much the writers were trying to get you as a viewer to dislike Liberty, because even though she wasn't my favorite character, there of course were instances where I would still root for her. So the fact that they went to that great of lengths to make you not like her with the way they got her to speak and to behave, I just it really just left a poor taste in my mouth personally. Lastly, we are going to be speaking about Danny Vanzant. Now, a character like Danny was kind of similar to Hazel in a sense where they were really involved in the show, where they intertwined with a lot of different characters' narratives, but didn't have a lot of narratives that he stood alone with, if that makes sense. He was the younger brother of Liberty, and yeah, I just felt like him as a character was not super impactful on the show Degrassi, which is unfortunate because I feel like there was so much more that they could have done with a character like Danny. You know, he was one of the star football players. I think he was the captain at one point. And, you know, he almost had a relationship with the character Mia. So there was a lot of great things that they could have done with him, but they just kind of put them at a standstill. You know, they had that one weird moment when he was really good friends with Derek and he, you know, tried to get him accused of shoplifting, which was really weird. And, you know, he made that whole comment about, I didn't know you'd get in that much trouble. And it's like, he's black. Like, what do you mean? So, like, that didn't make no sense. And, like, I don't know. It's frustrating, like, looking back at so many of these different scenarios and the different characters that were in the show and knowing that the characters themselves, the actors themselves, had so much more to offer the show, but they just weren't given the framework to really do more with their characters. Even in the case of like with Andrea Lewis, she spoke to the people behind the scenes and they just ignored her. They didn't want to help her out with her character. I can't speak for the other actors on the show and what happened with their characters behind the scenes, but I just felt like, yeah, with a character like Danny and with all the other characters that I've been speaking about in this video, the main thing that I want you guys to take away from this video is that there's so much more that could have been done with them, and this is why we have to ask more of the characters we watch on screen, because if we don't ask more for the black characters that we get, we're gonna get the same characters that are not super well rounded and are not given great backstories. And Danny is one of those characters that unfortunately had that fate. We didn't know that much about his backstory besides, oh, he's a little brother of Liberty, he likes to play in a band with his friends, and he plays football. But there wasn't that much to take away from his character, unfortunately. And lastly, I'll just mention that his last relationship on the show was Shantae. Similar to Jimmy and Hazel, they were a very short-lived relationship that hardly ever got any screen time, just to kind of take that point home for you all to understand this big issue that this show really had that continued on for that majority of the series. Now, to end off this video, I just want to reiterate some of the points that I've been making throughout it, with one of the main ones being that every single black character on this show, whether it be throughout their entire stamp on the show or with certain storylines that they were a part of, were at some point the catalyst for a main white character, meaning they were sidekicks essentially. So much of these characters was to help move along the main white characters in the show instead of being able to be their own people in this series. And I feel like that's one of the biggest unfortunate things about the show, because I am a fan of it. Obviously, I've watched the entire Degrassi Next Generation 2 to 3 times, so I wouldn't keep watching it if I didn't like it. But as a black fan of the show, it's frustrating to see that this is the way that the writers and the producers saw us. Whether they realized it or not, this is, you know, the way that they represented black teenagers during this time. there wasn't a lot of shows that represented black teens in ways that didn't glorify us through violence and, mayhem. This was one of the few times that you could go on TV and see black teens just being teenagers. And even with that, there are all of these, issues that I spoke about today. Alright everyone, that's it for my video today. I hope you all enjoyed me speaking about the issues that I found with the black characters in the show Degrassi. If you like this video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And you can comment down below any suggestions you have for me in the future, or if you'd like me to do more Degrassi videos, I'd definitely be open for that. And I will see you all in my next one.